Well, more chaos in the Florida ballot recount. A judge gives Palm Beach County 5 extra days to tally their ballots. And our next guest saw firsthand the madness that happened there during the 2000 Florida recount. Stephen Meyer was the attorney for the Palm Beach County Democratic Party at the time. And he joins us now to talk a little bit more about this. Thank you so much for joining us this morning so early.
Thank you very much for having me.
So lots of people awake there in Florida, a lot of counting going on, but probably not a big surprise to you, right?
It's not. We had about over 8 million people cast ballots in this race. For example, in 2000, in the presidential race, you only had 5.9 million people, but the population of the state has grown so much, so you had a huge turnout, and it just takes a long time to count the ballots because people vote in many different ways: absentee ballot, early voting, on election day, overseas ballots, provisional ballots, things like that.
So we're taking a look at some of the video that is coming in of all of these recounts that are happening. Take us through the actual process and explain to us, because when you hear about a hand recount and you hear about that amount of votes, how in the world could that be, legitimized?
Well, the hand recount, first they do a machine recount, and they run all the ballots through a machine a second time. And typically, the vote total doesn't change very much from the vote total that you have on election day. But you have two other categories of votes called overvotes and undervotes. Overvotes are ballots in which the machine says that the person voted more than once in an election. So, for example, in a presidential election, they voted for 2 different candidates. So the machine will not count those. And then you have undervotes, where the machine does not read any vote for in a particular race for any candidate. This is really the key in recounts. The value lies in the undervotes, and you have to look at those ballot by ballot, because it's sort of like taking an SAT test. You fill in the bubble, and if you don't use the right leaded number 2 pencil, if you don't make a dark enough mark, if you color outside the bubble, or you have some stray mark, then the machine will not count it. But in a hand recount, the canvassing board in each county can look at that, and they can see that a vote was cast. And so many of the votes that are the undervotes actually should be counted.
So when we hear about new ballots being found, you say that's not the case? That
is not the case at all. There are still...
Go ahead.
Excuse me. There are still some ballots coming in. For example, the overseas ballots. In a federal election, voters who live outside, who are registered in Florida but live outside the state, have 10 days from the election day, so that would be Friday of this week, to return their ballots. The ballots have to be postmarked on or before the election day, but they can be received up to 10 days later. And this includes members of the military. It includes students or people working overseas. And so I don't know what the total is going to be, but those ballots are still coming in, and there should be at least several thousand in the state.
Why does it always seem then that when we get to this point that the party that benefits tends to be the Democratic Party?
I don't think they're benefiting. I think the Republicans have actually benefited. For example, in Broward County, you had this ballot error. In 2000, we had 2 different design errors. One in Palm Beach County that was called the butterfly ballot, and one in Jacksonville, that's Duval County, that was called the caterpillar ballot. Those together took tens of thousands of votes away from Al Gore. And here in Broward County, you have a different design error this time that appears to have thrown the election to Rick Scott. It cost Bill Nelson probably about 10,000 votes in Broward County because people didn't see the race, where it was placed on the ballot, and they skipped it. It's a total anomaly. So Broward County has under 10% of the population of Florida, but 74% of the people who skipped this voting in the Senate race are in Broward County.
All right. Well, we will see if they meet these deadlines coming up very quickly. Stephen Meyer, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.